Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Inessa, and I am an indie author from Toronto, Canada, and I publish under the name of A. Sage. I publish mostly in fantasy, sci fi, and all things paranormal and magic. And today we are going to be talking about a series Bible for authors, why you need one, and we're also going to take a look at a series Bible that I have currently for one of my series that I'm working in so you can see how I use it and how you can use yours as well. Hello, hello. I hope everybody is doing well. We have a slightly different looking video today in that I'll be only screen sharing with you guys so that you can see my screen, my series Bible that I use. I figured it might be a bit easier this way than just talking about it face to face. So I hope that's okay. I think it's going to work out really well. So as you can see today, we are discussing a series Bible. And last week, I did a video on how to write a series, and I thought this was a really good segue into discussing what a series Bible is, why you need one, why it's important to have one if you're writing multiple books in one world and in one kind of overarching plot, and as well as to show you my own series Bible that I currently have for Shadowhurst so you can kind of get an idea of what one looks like. So I think the first thing that we should do is talk about why it is that you need a series Bible. So, one of the main things for needing a series Bible is to have a point of reference for when you're writing later books in that series. So, if you've written something in book one, it might become a little bit difficult to then remember everything that you've written there as far as details about character goes, your world, small little reference points that you might have, and having a place where you collect all of that information and that data to later reference as you're writing books is a really great way to keep everything organized and to keep yourself on track so you don't mess up, so there's no plot holes and things like that. Now, when you're writing only two books, you might be okay with not having a full Bible, but once you get into three, four, five, and more books, as well as spin offs and things like that, a series Bible in a place where all of the stuff kind of lives so you can continue to reference it is really great. And another good thing about having one of these is you can actually share it with other people so that you can share it with your beta readers, with your editor, so they also have something to reference. So when they're doing your editing, your reading, and just giving you general ideas, they have something to look back on and see exactly what it was that you've written earlier on. And then everybody's kind of on the same page. The next point for having a series Bible and why you need one is to organize your ideas and your plot. Now, it's okay if you kind of have your ideas already in your head and things like that, but to have something that's stored somewhere in order to be able to organize everything that you're going to do in your plot and in your ideas is really, really important for a long running series. It also helps you figure out plot holes and things like that, and it helps you kind of solidify where your series is going, as well as that big series arc that we talked about in last week's video. And then the next point is it helps you understand the characters and it helps you understand everybody that you are writing about in your books. As you'll see later on in my own series Bible, I have a spot for every single one of the characters that somehow appear in the book for longer than just a few seconds or a few sentences. And I have developed arcs for them. I know what their goals are, their motivation, and things like that. So having all of this inside your series Bible really helps you understand what the purpose of your characters are and how they're going to later on play into the rest of the series. I also found for me with Shadowhurst, for example, and that's the series Bible that you're going to see, is once I had a good understanding of the characters, it helped me flush out whose points of view I'm going to use, as well as who I'm going to use as the main characters for my spin off series. One more really good way to use your series Bible, especially if you're writing fantasy, at least it is for me, is it helps you develop a magic system. I organize everything in my series Bible about my magic system. I know how the magic works, the different spells, because this is a witchy book that we'll be looking at, all the different spells that the character use, how those spells work, where they come from, what are the limitations of the magic, and how the magic works in the world, etc. And it really helps you develop a more concrete world when it comes to magic, especially in fantasy. And again, if you're not writing in fantasy, any other system or political system that you might have, your factions and things like that, it's a really good way to organize all of that and develop it better so that when you actually are writing your books, your world continues to grow as your books develop and as your series Bible develops. And the last good thing about the series Bible is it really helps you compile all your research, your references, any ideas that you might have for further books, because everything is in one place. And so when you look back on it, if you have tabs or sections, you can always go back to it and kind of cross references everything that you've done. And then when you're thinking of an idea or you have some research, you'll plot it all and it's all in one place so that if you need to reference it again, you know where to find it. Now, for me, a lot of my references and what you'll soon see is a lot of it is about magic use, history of different factions, history of Wicca and witchcraft, and things like that. And I think it really helps me kind of understand the world better, but also it helps me get a better grasp of what it is that I am trying to accomplish with these books and kind of completes everything as a whole. So now that we've seen some of the reasons why it's important to have a series Bible, and I think it really, really is if you're writing a series, it doesn't have to be. I mean, the one you're going to see that I use is in Scrivener. If you don't use Scrivener or you use Word to write in, you can always have a Word document for your series Bible. And alternatively, really, for like you can use a notebook. For the first series I've written for Etherborn, I actually used an HP notebook and I kind of put everything together in that, and I hand wrote absolutely everything for all of that research and the character work and just the entire Bible. But moving into Shadowhurst, I knew it was going to be a very long running series with spin offs off of it. So I needed something more digital just because it's a bit faster for me to type it out. Then I can also copy paste from the books as they get written, etc. So it just made more sense for me to have it in Scrivener. But again, anything that you would want to use could work for this. So anything that works for you could become a series Bible, really. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little screen share for you guys and walk you through what the different sections in my own series Bible are so you can see how I organize it. Okay, so we are in my Shadowhurst series Bible right now, and I'm gonna go over here, and there's some parts I won't show you just because there's spoilers for anybody who is reading the books. And if I accidentally show them, I'll blur them out in editing. But as you can see, the top section of my series Bible are the book section, and over here, the first one is I have a series outline, which is where I keep all of the ideas for every single one. Like I said, I have plotted out the entire series already, not in detail, but I know what's happening in every single book that's coming up, the main conflicts, what the purpose is, and where it leads to the next one. And one other thing that I actually forgot to mention when we did the series Bible, why you should have one thing is if you're writing anything that leads into other books and you have breadcrumbs, this is kind of an amazing place to keep all that because you can reference it. And you and the series outline, I actually have all my breadcrumbs listed out for every single book so that I can reference this before I start to write the book, before I start to plot the book, to see what I need to talk about and what I need to hint at and what things are coming back and relating to the other books. So to start off, the first one is, again, there's a book section. We have a character section, a major events section, a groups and factions. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's where my mouse is right here. A groups and factions section, a location section, a magic section, an items section. Then we have research, reference, ideas, and project notes. So we'll go through each one by one so you can see how I set it up. So in the book section, I have every single one of my books color coded, and I will show you why as we go through it. So the first one is Witch of Shadows. It's purple. I just color code them based on the covers. And I have the cover is just kind of like a small breakdown of the book so that I know what happened more or less without having to reread the whole thing. So I have the cover, I have the blurb, and then I have a chapter by chapter outline. And I get this from my actual Scrivener document in which I write. So I just export the chapter by chapter outline and I put it in here so that I have kind of a bird's eye view of what more or less happened in the book. And I have that for every single one of the books that I have had in the series so far, right? So that's pretty useful to have when you want an overview of what books you have, what order they go in, and pretty much what happened in every book. Then we go into the character section. And so the characters, I have broken them down by protagonists, antagonists, supporting characters, and subplotters. And so what I mean by that is the protagonist, very obvious, right? Like you have Billy, who is a protagonist. Then I have River, Savannah, and Logan. They're all four protagonists. We started off with just Billy. And what I have under Billy's character notes, and this is when we talked about organizing and developing your characters, I have a kind of a summary of who she is, more or less. Then I have a one sentence summary of who she is. And that just, for me, that kind of gives me an overview of like just at the core who she is as a person. And if I were to describe her to someone really quickly, like that elevator pitch for a character, this would be it. I have her motivation, her goal, her conflict, and then an epiphany. And this is really, I think, very useful because I like this kind of helps me understand when her character arc really changed. Because for Billy, unlike some of the other characters, because she's been around since book one, her arc is a little bit slower in development. So I want to know like when that point was when everything changed for her. And then I have basic information for her. So age, eye color, weight, and this is just descriptions, right? Like who she is, her status, right? So her partner is River, her biological father, blah, blah, blah. And then the social information as well. So where she's located, her status, her job or her career, the position, the rank that she holds in the coven. Then we have some skills and hobbies. And again, this is a really like small overview, but it kind of helps me see like who she is. So when I'm writing, sometimes if something doesn't sound right, I'll go back to this and I'll be like, all right, like this is her like actual personality. Like over here, I have her personality and how she behaves. And that's why it didn't sound right because that's not how she would approach that situation. Then we have her physical description, likes and dislikes, a personal history. And this is where the color coding comes in, right? So when I am writing, oh God, I don't know how far. Okay, so this is only up to book 3, so hopefully it's not too many spoilers. But this one here is just what I started with, right? Like at the beginning. And then I added, so we have Book of Darkness, it's blue. So in the Book of Darkness, we actually discovered this a little bit about her history, right? And what happened. So I highlighted in blue. So I know that, yes, this is information pertinent to Billy, but also this came up in book 2. And then this came up in book 3. Same with this, right? So it just gives me an idea of when certain things occurred in her history so that when I am writing later books and I have to reference something that happened, I know where it occurred. And if I need to do more research, I know which book to check. And then we have like a few notable sayings that I might repeat. I also have a casting section. So this is actually a photo of the girl on the cover. So the model on the cover, obviously she doesn't look like that anymore because there's a lot of work of painting it to make her look different. But that's kind of like who I picture Billy being when I'm writing her. The same we have for River. So exactly the same breakdown for every single one. Then we have a hello, yum. Um, and same for like Savannah. And you guys can see kind of who I picture in my head when I'm writing these people. And Logan, I mean, obviously a younger version, but delish. Then we have the same kind of structure for the antagonist. So we have Evanora, which is the antagonist in the first book. And everything is the same here. Again, when something develops, I add in the color coding to it, etc. So, and here, let me just click on just her so you can only see her because it tends to scroll on Scrivener. Like if you highlight this entire section, it'll, this antagonist section, like all of the characters will be there. But if you go on just the one, it will just be this one. So yeah, we have Evanora, some of the casting for her, etc. So I do the same for supporting characters, for the subplotters, and the subplotters are just like characters that are kind of in the background. They make appearances here and there, but they're not like super important to the plot. But they're still there to kind of like expand the world and the some of these characters. The next section we have is the major events section. So for the major events, I have a few. I keep building them, and you keep building this book by book, right? Because more things will come out, especially if it's more of like a mystery book. You'll discover more and more about the world and some of the events that happened made the world become what it is today. So for Shadowhurst, I have witch burnings, and that was a huge event, right? Because that's kind of developed how the coven operates today and why they are the way they are. So in the events kind of breakdown, I have the place where it happened, the time when it happened, a summary of the event, who the participants were, what happened exactly, what the lead up was to the event, like why did it occur, what the fallout was from the event, and the social impact on the world today. And I have that for everything. So we have like the birth of the witches, the birth of the shadowers, creation of the High Coven, etc. Then our next section is groups and factions. This is really huge, I think. This and magic, I think, are the two main ones because you're going to have a lot of groups and factions as your stories grow. There's going to be more and more, like not just characters, but more groups that appear because otherwise, if they don't, there's no interest developing really. There's no stakes. And as the stakes get higher, other people get involved, especially if you're writing in any kind of fantasy, right? um and so for me, I have let's look at, like, for example, the High Coven. So that's one of the factions. And this really, keeping these kind of lists on your factions really helps because it helps you understand like how the politics of the world work and how they cross reference with one another and how they affect one another. And so, like, say for the High Coven or for any of them, let's say, I have a summary of the faction, the social structure of it, the government that occurs, like how decisions are made, etc. What the magic is, because this is a fantasy book. And then under population, so the people who are part of the faction, if you have different species and things like that. There's common physical characteristics, so we know all the witches are female, on the culture, what kind of beliefs. And over here, I just have see Wicca under research because I mean, I referenced a lot of actual Wiccan rituals, beliefs, structure, etc. For the building of the magic system and of the coven. And I use my own point of reference from my practice as well. But to put that on paper, there's a history of Wicca that we'll kind of take a look at briefly later on. And then for history, I just put down See the Birth of Witches, right? Because that's their history. And I do this for every single faction or people that show up, right? So like you can see here, I'm still working on this because we're only slowly finding out about the FAVE. Sorry, spoiler. I don't know how to, I can't blur that out. I said it out loud. So I don't have a lot filled out, but as the books go on, I'll be filling them out in these colored color coding systems. One by one, right? So the more that we discover, the more this gets filled out. And you can see how it starts really beefing up over time. Then we go into location. So this is pretty straightforward. So let's look at Shadowhurst as a whole, right? You have the type of the setting. It's a main town in the series. All the characters living and working in the setting. So everybody except the High Coven and the Fae. Then we have a summary. So the summary of the actual town. And then we have basic description. So I have a neighborhood description and I just kind of like copy the description from when I described the town when Billy first saw it. From the first book. And as the books come along, there's more things that show up. So like, let's say you have like, again, I had Main Street that she described also. I copied some important parts. So if I need to, like if I just have to remember and be like, oh wait, what did she say about this place? Or what did it look like? And what's the important part? I can come back to this locations folder and reference these details. So like the Crystal Cauldron, for example, we see that in book 1 as well. And Ms. Broussard is the only one who works at this setting. It's a business and a home. And the summary is it's a small cult shop located on Main Street in Shadowhurst. And then we have some details of the place. So we have a very important description of how Billy first sees this place, because the crystal cauldron will become more and more important in every book. It's kind of a central uh, point for the characters to meet, and Miss Broussard has more of a role to play slowly, not a huge role, but she's there. And then we have Miss Broussard's apartment. And I put this in here because I knew that I was going to be referencing this again in the novella that I'm writing. So if you don't know, I am writing a novella for this series, and it actually follows Billy's mom. So it was before Billy was born. So Billy's 17 in this. She starts at 16. She's 17 when you get to the slightly later books. I believe she turned 17. See, this is stuff I would have to reference here, but I believe she turned 17 in book 3, when she's in the cavern. And so um, I knew that I was going to write a novella that's sorry, my friend is messaging me. I should probably turn that off. So I knew that I was going to write a novella based on Billy's mom's perspective, to kind of do a little bit of a history to the coven and what happened, and what happened to her. Because as we find out in book 1, she has been imprisoned in the magical prison by the High Coven. And so a lot of readers kind of wanted to know more about her, and her mom, Beatrix. She will be a character, a fairly important character in later books, but I think they were just kind of like wondering just to see an alternate perspective on the coven and how her mom became the way that she is. So I knew I was going to write that. And originally, when Billy found out that Miss Broussard knew her mother, it happened in her apartment, right? So in Miss Broussard's apartment, they're just at the back of the shop, and she, like, you don't know anything, like she doesn't. We don't get to know that story. So the only part we know is that Billy's mother stole from Miss Broussard, and I'm glad I noted that down, because when I started writing the novella, I was having trouble figuring out like where I started, and then I realized that I'm going to start it with her stealing from the shop and getting caught, right, to kind of bring everything together. So things like that really help, like I said, for plot development, because like if I didn't note this down here, and then if I didn't go back to reread it before I started plotting the novella, I would have had a totally different start point, and it wouldn't have been as strong. So our next one is magic, right? So I have a section here that's spells by each book. So like I said, I keep a list of all the different spells that are used in every book. So we have like a vanquishing spell, which is like the main vanquishing. It's not really a spell. It's more like how you do it. Instructional, basically. Water scrying spell that Billy performs, a blocking spell, the scrying mirror, connecting to fire, locking a door, like all the different spells that you have. And then, like in the Book of Darkness, we have like all of these spells. In the Cavern of Lies, we actually only have one spell, because I won't say why, but there's a reason why there's less and less spell work happening. So let's just say that. Then under magic, I also have magic rules. So short description of what the source is, how to access it, the constraints of the magic. So the limitations is another way of phrasing that. What the categories are, all the special abilities that you could have, and then like a small note of like I have magic leaves blinking bright lights in the peripheral of the user, because that's something Billy describes fairly often. Then we have all the different Fae magic systems. So I have like the Earth Fae, their main name, what they do, their colors, their crystals, the herbs that associate with them, and some of their powers. And I have that for the Earth Fae, the Air Fae, the Fire Fae, and the Water Fae, and the Spirit Fae. And over here, you can see that we do find out that Billy has Spirit Fae bloodlines running through her veins in book 1. So it's not really a spoiler, but I have, again, the color coded additions per book as I go through them. Then we have an item section. This is just a one-page thing where I kind of add every item that as it becomes important. So we have like the grimoire, her dagger, and amethyst pendant that she gets from Miss Broussard in the first book, the Book of Darkness, what it is, etc. So we'll just skip over this really fast. So hopefully, if you didn't want a spoiler, sorry, don't. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. It's all kind of described in the blurb, so I think I feel okay about that. Then I have in the research, I have just a research list. Sometimes I, like in my other series Bible, I've added more to this, but over here I just have an ongoing list on things that I need to research, right? For myself. And then we get to the reference section. So, like I said, we have a reference on like Wicca, and I kind of just like went through it and read like a few things, and I kind of copy paste as I go along things that I find out, aside from my own books that I already own based on my own practice. But that's kind of where that goes. Word uses, right? So, like, I have a section here for what is capitalized and what is uncapitalized. Pretty important, right? Because so that you have consistency throughout your entire series. I have ideas for made bonds, so like something to draw on, because I know that I knew that there are shapeshifters, especially like wolves and stuff like that. So I wanted to have certain made bonds. You will know why this is important if you read the books. I have a riddle section, so I won't say why, but I think like this is in case I want to start writing more of like a riddle type mystery, because I kind of played around with the idea. So I had some ideas for like riddles that I can put into the books. And then I have British slang, because as we know, Logan is British, and while I have British friends, I don't want to bother them every 5 seconds. On like, how do you say like stupid in British, like with a slang, right? So I have like a few choice words that he might use, and that's pretty useful so that I don't always end up using like the same ones, because realistically, that's not how you would speak. If you're a native speaker. Then I have a section for ideas, and we will skip right through that because that has ideas for future books. And books that I am going to write. And I just kind of like, when I have an idea, I'll write it down somewhere, and then the next day I'll come back and I'll put it in this document, right? And then I have project notes section, and these are just some questions. So I labeled with question to answer. So who's watching Billy and Do two in book 2, and then I answer it. Why are there only female witches? So like stuff like that. Okay, so we'll go just before I spoil too much on that. So yeah, this is basically kind of like what the series Bible looks like for me. As you can see, there's quite a lot in here. I didn't have this all filled out from the start. Like, I only had one book, and I had minimal things here, right? Like, because I didn't have that many characters. But as it moves along and grows, and I find that after I've written every single book, once it gets published, once it's in that publishing stage, I make sure I give myself like an hour or two to sit down and fill this out with the extra ideas that came in, so that I'm always on top of it. And I find that that helps and is very, very important to keep. I hope that was helpful for you guys to see how it is that I organize my own series Bible. And I hope that this video helped you understand why it's so important to have one, and how it's an intricate part of the writing process. Even if you're not really a huge plotter, something like this can really save you a lot of headache from having to go back and read through books and research books. And it really helps the way that you communicate with your editor, your beta readers, and anybody else that is helping you through the writing process of the books. I found that when I started working on series Bibles, it just simplified and streamlined my writing so much more. And I constantly reference this document. It's almost always open on my laptop, especially when I'm editing. That's a huge part of it. When I'm doing self edits and I'm going through it, I always have to reference it to kind of see what it is that I missed, what I could have said wrong, if I described the character the wrong way, like if they have green eyes, I give them blue eyes or brown eyes or whatever. So it's incredibly important to have something like this. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. It doesn't have to be an extra time slot that's just sucking your energy dry. But once you have something basic and the skeleton of it set up, you'll find it's a lot easier to constantly add to it, and it's not as big of a deal as it might seem. I know it might seem very overwhelming when you're first starting out, But as you get into the habit of updating it after every single book and just using it as a reference point, I guarantee that this will change your life and the way of writing and make things so much easier for you. So yeah, I hope you guys like this video. I know it was a little bit different from the way that I usually do my videos, but I think this was a much more educational way of looking at it, and it's just probably a lot more helpful to see it this way than just hear me talk about it. So if you like this kind of videos on the craft of writing, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button and like this video so more authors can discover this channel and the material that I put on it. With that said, I hope you guys are having a great rest of the week, that you have a great weekend that's coming up. I personally cannot wait, and I will talk to you all in the next video next week. So stay magical, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.